So over the weekend, I had a meetup with the Sesi Queen girls, and it was in Arboretum. Those of you who are in Nairobi know very well that Arboretum is not that far from the CBD, but yours truly left the house knowing very well that I will get to town and I will take a boda to Arboretum. This will not have been the case for me in 2017 or even 2018. I have done a lot of trips to and from Arboretum. Even when I started my business, like I will go finish my business, then if a client wanted me to wait for her, I would actually stroll to Arboretum or Mishuki Park. But you see, currently, because of things like boda, the convenience of errand guys and delivery people, now you can imagine there's that person who left the house, they were driving, so they didn't even have the luxury of walking to the stage like I did. Of course, we have changing patterns in how we prepare our food, type of foods that you are eating, and definitely the selections and combination of our meals. I'll give you a story. When I was growing up, after preparing dinner, it was natural for me to start thinking about taking the jiko so that I can boil the ngwaci or even the maize that my mom came with for breakfast. And it was not uncommon for us to have tea and maize or even tea and ngwaci for breakfast. But currently it looks like foreign. When people come to the house and they find us having maize and tea, they actually wonder, and it begs the question, what are they really having in their houses? And as you have seen from my previous video, I was just having breakfast and I had bread because that is what was available. So availability of the highly refined foods, ready to use foods have actually really come up for us as a continent and as a country, and this is definitely affecting accessibility and availability and utilization of healthier foods. We are shying away from our indigenous, locally available foods, and now we are actually leaning towards intake of these highly refined and processed foods because one, they are convenient, they're easy to prepare, and they don't need the jiko that we were using back then. So I think moving forward we need to have policies that actually sell and market the healthier foods, because some people have them without even knowing the health impacts. The other day I was having a talk somewhere and one person asked me, when you tell me processed and refined foods, why don't you show me what they are? Why don't you show me the alternatives that I'm supposed to be feeding? And this person actually challenged me because as nutritionists, we actually tell you eat this, avoid eating this, do this, but we are not actually willing to take up the education roles to actually go further and tell you about, now if you stop eating this, I will need you to substitute with this, and I will need you to add this to make it a bit healthier and even more convenient if it is possible. Of course, there's also the aspect of urbanization without prompt nutrition education. As you have seen, Kenya and most African countries have actually neglected investments in nutrition programs, and that is why the most affected programs with the withdrawal of the US-based donors is basically nutrition, because our African leaders had actually normalized that we don't need to budget for nutrition in our domestic or even local investments. We have to just wait and write proposals and send to our donors. With the withdrawal of that, even the small that was actually happening is no longer happening. So we need interventions to ensure that there is prompt education on the changing trends from rural settings to urbanizations, and how we can actually integrate indigenous foods to urbanization in an acceptable and a safe and convenient way. Because at the end of the day, we have to appreciate that things are changing, and if you're not willing to change with the way we are doing things, people will not be willing to board on the aspect of healthy living. And of course, there is also the aspect of food insecurity in countries like Kenya and most African regions, and this mentality that someone will tell you, Mtanu, you're telling me to have an egg. I can't have an egg. What is available is ugali. But if you teach that person right, maybe they can have an egg instead of having a slice of bread. Maybe they can have an egg instead of having chips. Maybe they can have an egg instead of having smoky. The alternatives with availability and affordability in mind is very important. I said this and I'm going to repeat it. Now, with the exit of these donors, we are going to have these NGOs and these proposers actually look for a way to actually fill in the gaps of the funds. And let me tell you for a fact, food security or food insecurity is a serious gray area in the entire African region. We are going to have a lot of projects on eliminating food insecurity, but the questions that we should be posing to those projects as nutritionists and as healthcare workers actually care about Kenyans is whether this availability of this food is also taking care of the nutrition, quality, composition, and bioavailability of the foods that they are being offered. We don't want a situation whereby we are still going to be feeding on disease as we have been doing. We want to make sure that we are dealing with the challenges that we have and not creating others. And once we start tackling food insecurity with the community at the center of it all, we're definitely going to do better as a nation. And of course, we also have the aspect of weak policies and limited collaborations. As I have said, over time, African leaders, whether ministerial, whether presidential, whether regional, they have actually centered their intervention when it comes to health to communicable diseases. Like, it has always been the thing. NCDs are coming up, yes, people are talking about cancers, people are talking about diabetes, people are talking about obesity, but still, we still have a lot of issues when it comes to integration of the prevention and the promotive aspect of these conditions into the health systems. You know, the talk is there, but people are talking about how to cure cancer. They're not talking about how to prevent diabetes. They're talking about how to now manage blood sugars after you already have the uncontrolled blood sugars. So we need to ensure that, again, we integrate the preventive and the promotive aspect of health into the whole policies when it comes to managing and preventing or even treating conditions. That has to be done for us to move forward as a country when it comes to all these conditions that we are struggling with, including obesity. And of course, there's the aspect of people working single-handedly, because let's say now Kenya, we think that we are doing better than our neighbor, maybe Uganda, maybe we are doing better than our neighbor, maybe Tanzania. Let's not even go far. I have seen it in the counties. Like, there is no communication or there is no channel of actually ensuring that we are working with adoption of policies that work from different regions or even different counties to make it easier to skip the whole process of development, you know, and all this costs money. And unfortunately, those in leadership do not care, because at the end of the day, we have become so selfish as humans. We don't care about the impact of the work that we are doing. And I hope that we are going to move past that, because it's the only way that we'll be able to tackle issues in healthcare. And in light of that, we usually have health education webinars every Thursday at the Nutritionist Corner with my partner Charity Wanyonyi. You need to make sure that you check us out. I will leave the links to our pages, the links to the Nutritionist Corner, the link to our current webinar, so that you can actually have a look and you join us, so that we can ensure that we empower and we strengthen these collaborations when it comes to fighting malnutrition in Kenya and in Africa generally. So thank you so much for watching. I hope I will see you in the next video, where we will be talking about the dangers of sleep deprivation in your child's development and growth. Until next time, make sure that you stay subscribed, share this with a health enthusiast or even a health activist, so that we can be able to join hands and fight for the well-being of our country and our continent. So bye.